Well, what breaks my heart right now is the West, right? It's not Russia's action. I mean, I expect that from Putin. I expect that from the Russian Federation. But I never expected, and this is something I posted on Facebook, and I got a lot of backlash for that from my conservative friends. I said Putin is not going to win the war in Ukraine. That is an impossibility. But he has already won the war of propaganda. I mean, he has taken over a large chunk of American conservatives, European conservatives. They are diehard fans of Putin, and they tend to justify every nasty thing that man does. And what makes it even more heartbreaking is that there is a large chunk of people, especially in the left this time, who support the Soviet Union. I mean, if they spend at least 5 minutes a day studying the Cold War, studying the don't get me started on this, the seemingly unlimited atrocities committed by the Soviet regime. I mean, the Soviet regime killed 100 million. I mean, the communists collectively, China, Mao's China included, killed 100 million people. They killed more people than Hitler, than Nazi Germany. Yet the swastika is banned, but the sickle and hammer is not banned. You don't look at the sickle and hammer and the Soviet flag with the disgust that you do when you look at the Nazi flag. It's not even banned, right? Well, the Nazi flag and the or Nazi insignia is banned in Germany. But somebody who has done much greater atrocities than that is openly celebrated. So it all connects to this Putin worship, the Soviet Union worship, and kind of like blindly supporting this war. Because if you go to the social media posts of all these conservative news outlets, right? All these conservative news outlets, and they post something neutral about Russia. And you look at all the comments and you expect most of them to be conservatives because they typically are on a conservative news outlet. They're all supporting Russia and completely calling Zelensky a dictator, Zelensky the wrongdoer. That's what, breaks my heart.
Well, Ukraine's definitely corrupt, but then again, most governments are. So is Russia.
Sure,
But then
sure. I
again,
mean,
I do believe that most of the Russians are actually against the war. I mean, in Thailand, where I'm now, there's lots of Russians, and I've met a few of them. And they've told me personally that they hate the war, they're against the war.
absolutely, absolutely. Heaven forbid, we are not talking about the average Russian citizen, right? Most of them are definitely against the war and they're fleeing to Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Mongolia, these countries to evade
And here in
conscription.
Thailand,
Right,
and
Thailand,
here in
India,
Thailand, this,
in India
yeah,
too. They're running away and they're openly, but are they able to say that in their home country? No, definitely no. We're talking about
no.
Putin, the Putin regime, the Russian Federation government, right? And
Mm.
their actions. And Ukraine is no angel. Sure, it's a corrupt country. I mean, there are many shady dealings with Biden coming out now. That's all true, but is it reason enough to invade? Is it reason enough for Russia to invade a European sovereign country?
Absolutely not. But then
Absolutely.
again, I thought it's all about politics. I've been to Ukraine twice in my life. It was quite a while ago, back in 2009, in my last visit, and I
Yeah.
do remember there was about an hourly train service to Moscow,
Hmm.
and then there was like at least a half hourly flight from Kiev to Moscow.
I
And
see.
if you go back maybe 2 or 3 years,
Hmm.
before, well before the war started, even before COVID or anything like that, all those transport links had stopped
Right.
for some
Right.
reason. I guess it's due to politics.
Yeah.
And obviously they speak very similar, same language or very similar language, and
Hmm.
well they know both languages, and their family on either side of the border. They're very
Right.
like very similar people.
Right.
It's
Right.
all just dirty politics, sort of this money.
In one word, why do you think Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine? In one word.
I just think it's politics. I just put that word as politics, I suppose.
It all condenses down to politics. But I am 100% sure it's not NATO expansion because really, seriously, it's not
No,
that's not reason enough. I mean, why would you perceive NATO as a threat if I mean it doesn't really add up. I mean, NATO has never been a threat to any nation. You know, when has NATO? Do you agree with me on that? Do you think NATO has been a threat, like
no, not
Iran is a threat to Israel? Because Iran is openly threatening Israel, right, on a daily basis. opening,
Yeah.
well, yeah, because they even write in Hebrew on the Iranian missiles, death to Israel, right? They're obsessed with the complete destruction of Israel, the Iranians. So that kind of threat has never ever been posed, has never been issued by NATO to any nation in the history of its existence. Russia, out of all countries, do not need to feel threatened by NATO as long as they have some malicious intent to inflict upon the West, which they do, as proven by the works like Putin's People, right? Bestseller novel. I don't know if you've read it. Bestseller. It's I always quote this line from Putin's People, the book. It says that if you want to find people who want to destroy the United States, you typically go to the Middle East. You go to Afghanistan, you go to Iraq to find radical Islamists who want to destroy the United States, but you don't actually need to go to the Middle East. You have to go to Moscow. There are people in the government who are hell-bent on destroying the United States more than the Islamists in the Middle East. So why do you, it's not NATO that caused Putin to, I mean, that's just a reason that he's putting in forward. It's a facade for the invasion. I personally think that it was trying to bring Russia back to its Soviet glory days, you know
Yeah.
trying
I
to
kind of think of that
territory,
as well.
right, because in 2008 he had this kind of pseudo invasion into Georgia, and he has this 100% influence over the Central Asian region. Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, they're all under the Russian belt. So he wants to, flex his muscle through Eastern Europe. I mean, Belarus is already in his
Yeah.
pocket, so he wants Ukraine because he's really pissed off at Zelensky because he's not like Yanukovych. Yeah, because he was a Russian puppet, right? So after Euromaidan
Mm.
in 2014, he was pissed off because Ukraine is no longer under Russian influence. It's like, it's broken
Yeah.
off, right? So he wants to, bring it back under Russian influence. So I
Yeah,
think
he's
that's
afraid
the
of
reason.
losing those. I think you're right. He's afraid of losing those satellite countries like Ukraine and maybe the other stands down to the south as well. He wouldn't want them to be next. He
Right,
just
right.
has his mind back in the glory days of back
Absolutely.
in the
Right.
Soviet days.
Right. It's a famous
What
thing
it
he
is.
said, he who doesn't miss the Soviet Union has no heart, and he who wants it back has no brain.
Mm.
Right. So there's a
Yeah,
lot
makes
of things,
sense. Yeah,
yeah, lot of things that you can read from that. In a sense, you don't want the Soviet Union back, but in a sense, you still want it back. Right.
because if you're very emotional, your intelligence goes down. That's a well-known fact. I do think he's lost the plot a little.
Yeah, yeah, he's lost his numbers. Yeah, yeah, he's a little mentally unstable at the moment. That's what I'm inclined to think, because delusional. That's what I'm paranoid, delusional, because he's not in the Kremlin half the
Yeah,
time. He's up in the Ural Mountains in his big fortress, and
yeah,
how far away he keeps all his visitors on the table. The table is like 100 feet long, right? So he's
yeah.
really
That's not just
paranoid.
because that wasn't just because of COVID, was it?
Absolutely not. No, no. He's afraid
Do
of
you
being.
think that there's a good chance? Do you think there's a good chance of there being an inside job in the Russian government at some point to bring down Putin? And do you think he's starting to
Absolutely,
mistrust
absolutely,
his
absolutely.
people?
This brings back to what you said, Jonathan, about the majority of the Russian people actually getting tired, absolutely tired of him. And what happened to
Mm.
Mussolini? What happened to Stalin? You know, people hated him so much they just wanted him dead, right? And they more
Yeah.
often than not take the initiative. I mean, coming to India, I mean, there's an old um, interview of Putin in which the interviewer is asking him, "Are you ever afraid of your bodyguards?" Because there have been incidents of bodyguards killing the people they're supposed to protect. And that happened in India. A former Prime Minister of India, Indira Gandhi, she was really popular. She was assassinated by her own bodyguard. So Putin was
Mm.
asked this question. And for a second, he looked to the floor, contemplating, introspecting, and then he said, "He who is destined to drown will not be hung, and he who is destined to be hung will not drown." Okay, cryptic answer like most of his answers, but that shines light on the possibility that fate. He believes in fate. So he's not completely
Mm.
ruling it out, and I think that could happen because a lot of theories coming out about him being afraid of a coup and wants to maybe step down and install a puppet in the place of the president and kind of move away from his political life so that he can save his own skin and not get assassinated. You know, a lot of these theories coming out. Another theory says
Yeah,
that he has Parkinson's, and another theory says he has cancer, right? So,
there's a lot of theories like that, but then there's a lot of people saying that actually no, he's fine.
which of
Yeah, of
course brings
course.
us back to the public perception in the West. Conservative types are, if not actively supporting Putin, are at least Putin leaning. Why do you think that's happening? Why do you think they're so blind to this person's atrocities?
Because the West is so divided
Hmm.
and they don't trust their own government,
Right, right.
especially in America. They don't trust the Biden administration.
Yeah,
So they have nowhere to kind of look to, no major government. So they think, oh, well, the Western government's corrupt. Look what's just happened with COVID
right,
and Biden and his son and his dodgy dealings in Ukraine.
right,
So yeah, they automatically think that it's the Western media is brainwashing them, and they can get that evidence from COVID, which is actually a fact. They was.
right,
So yeah, they automatically think, okay, the Western media is the Western side is the more, what shall I say, more corrupt, more
right,
not the one to trust.
right, right. That's a
It's
wonderful
just my
answer, Jonathan.
thoughts.
I think no, that is a really, really valid point that you put forward. I never thought about that. That is true. I think COVID and the transition from the Trump administration to the Biden administration and the subsequent pathetic nature of the Biden governance has a lot to do with that, because the public has
Absolutely.
completely lost faith in the government, in the Western governmental system, which makes it so easy for them to believe in Putin, and what he's doing is for the best, right? That is absolutely true.
Yeah.
Plus the propaganda. I mean, Putin has a wonderful, effective propaganda machine, especially on Western social media, because you see it right in front of
Mm.
you.
And they were surprised to see an English person. They were literally shocked because I don't know why they were shocked, but I do hear one of the conspiracy theories. And so everybody in England's poor because of the high energy bills, high gas prices. Maybe they think, I don't know if it's true. Is it true that we can't travel because they think it's too expensive now because of the war? But
Right.
yeah, they were really shocked to see an English person in Thailand.
I mean, so how do you think this will end, the conflict, Russia-Ukraine conflict?
It's $1 million question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think there is a chance that there is an inside job in Russia,
Hmm.
or maybe linked to the CIA even
Right.
with an inside job in Russia. Never rule that out.
No, just like we analyzed with the possibilities of MS-370, let's analyze some possibilities and the chances of them happening. The first, as you pointed out, CIA launches a covert operation, takes down Putin. And they've tried to
Mm.
do that with Che, they've tried to do that with Castro. They've done that successfully in many countries in the Middle East. So sure, I mean, they've at least tried to. I mean, it's a big possibility they could do that. So then Putin
Yeah.
dies, and then there is somebody else in power who is more West-leaning, which is typically what happens when a leader is removed from power. That will be a good ending, because then there is a resolution to the conflict. And then there is a Ukraine military victory, right? Thanks to the
Mm.
huge aid packages and the NATO um, help, there could be a Ukraine military victory in which Ukraine reconquers the annexed areas and also Crimea. And then I wouldn't call that a good ending, because then given how paranoid and crazy Putin is, he might even go all out and use nukes, right? Do you think that's a possibility?
But if he does that, he knows he has supporters in Ukraine. He knows he's going to hurt people in Ukraine. And if he
Right,
uses a nuclear weapon in Ukraine, he knows he's going to hurt his own people in Russia as well.
right, right.
So I do kind of think,
Yeah,
the only chance of nukes is if he literally knew he was just about to be toppled over
right, right. Yeah.
with a job.
He'll only, yeah,
I do find it unlikely. I still think it's going to take them a long time. I think it'll be many years
right. It could
at the
be
moment.
because it's already a war of
I don't think
attrition,
they're
right?
long.
It's a war of attrition already, so it'll be a prolonged conflict. That's for sure. But yeah, so that's one possibility. And the other possibility is Russia voluntarily, Putin voluntarily backing out after saying, no, he never calls it a war, right? He calls it a special military operation.
A special operation, yeah.
Right, he calls it a special military operation, some special military operation indeed. So he could say that the objectives of our special military operation has been met, we are pulling out. That's a possibility because and what are the objectives? That's classified. We can't say that, right? That's a very safe way to, right? That's very safe,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
They can say, I mean, Donetsk and Luhansk, Donbass area is even before the war dominated by Russian-leaning people. Like the people there
yeah.
are Russian-speaking and they love Russia, right? And this is there's a parallel in the India-Pakistan conflict in Kashmir. There's a region in Kashmir where there are a lot of people who are Pakistan-leaning, right? They're they don't like India at all, right? So that begs the question: is it really worth it for India to, hold on to that region? It is actually historically Indian land, right? Kashmir belongs to India, no doubt. But is it really worth it holding on to it? Because then you're holding on to people who despises you. And is it
Yeah.
worth for Ukraine to hold on to Donbass when the majority, 80-90% of the people are Russian leaning and will happily take up a Russian passport, right? So isn't it better for Ukraine to just give up Donbass and then be happy with what they have and try to, and then they could use it as a negotiating platform. They could say, we'll give you Donbass, but you have to allow us to join NATO.
Yeah, that would be good. That would be a good outcome, but
Be a
would a lot of
wonderful
people in the
outcome.
West? So,
Right.
yeah, it would be definitely, but would a lot of people in the West support that? But then again, or would you in Ukraine support that? Because then again, would that also be a loss of face with Ukraine? Because they've constantly said we're going to take back Donbass,
Yeah, but
take
it's
back the
okay. It's
Crimea.
okay. It's
So
okay
it
that
could
that
just be a
loss of
loss of
that
face.
is it really though, Jonathan? It is a loss of face, but if getting full membership into NATO is the upside of it, then it's no longer a loss of face because then you're guaranteeing your country, you're guaranteeing the safety of
Yeah,
your country because then you're NATO, you're subject to Article 5. Yeah,
yeah.
attack on one country is um seen as an
Attack on all.
attack on all,
Yeah.
right? So that's that. I think that would be the ideal outcome. Then Russia
Mm.
wouldn't feel that they have also been humiliated because they got the territory, and Ukraine is safe from any further invasion by any country. So that'll be
Yeah.
a wonderful outcome, and let's hope that that comes to fruition because that would be optimal.
I hope so, because there's just lots of young people just getting killed and injured just because of politics. I think it's just an absolute silly situation. It really
Absolutely.
is.
Old people,
2023 and people just fighting
right,
over
right,
using tanks
absolutely.
and everything.
Right. That's so 20th century. It doesn't belong
I
in the
know
20th century.
all of
Right.
what. Yeah,
Right. It
I mean, all they
doesn't.
want to do is party and drink vodka, isn't it? That's all they need to do. Share a bottle of vodka and chill out. Stop all this nonsense.
I mean, look to Israel again. I mean, thanks predominantly to Donald Trump. God bless him. Um, the majority of the major players in the Arab world are now peaceful allies of Israel. And these are the countries that wanted to annihilate Israel and drive all the Jews out to the Mediterranean Sea multiple times during the 20th century. They're now shaking hands with Israeli diplomats and ambassadors all across the Middle East. It's a wonderful thing.
Mm.
It's a great thing,
Yeah,
actually. Right.
it is. Yeah, things they can definitely agree with. There's no point
Hey,
in all
the
this
Indians
stupid
and
fighting.
Pakistanis could do that, and the Chinese and the Taiwanese could do that, and the Russians and the Ukrainians could do that, and the Azerbaijanis and the Armenians could do that. That would be great, but that's not going to happen as long as there are people who stand to gain from the military-industrial complex.
Okay, yeah. I was just saying that, yeah, you was asking who gains. And I think, well, it's politics and it's companies that manufacture weapons of war.
Right.
I think a lot of what we haven't discussed yet. It's the
Hmm.
same with COVID. It goes down to money.
Exactly.
The big defense contracts in either country,
Right. Right.
them, the politicians.
Right. Just like there
Again,
are people who
money,
would
greed.
absolutely money comes down to money and politics, right? Just like there are people who would want to see COVID prolonged so that they can make money off pharmaceuticals. There will be people who want wars to be prolonged so that they could sell weapons.
Mm.
Very
Yeah.
lucrative
I
business.
mean,
Yeah.
Why would you give a vaccine to a 5-year-old? Why would you want to do a yearly booster? There's just no point.
Right, right.
You know, everybody's got natural immunity now. It's so obvious that it's just the money.
Right.
Same with
Back in 2020, when I was sitting under lockdown, this quote came to my mind, and quite proud of, penning that down. I said that the world consists, the entirety of the world consists of sheep, right? Very easy to manipulate. History
yeah.
remembers the best shepherds, meaning the best people, the people who are most capable of controlling the sheep. At the end of the day, that's how it boils down to.
Exactly what Hitler did, what loads of people did.
As we said, it all comes down to money and politics, but money and politics can't do things unilaterally if there is no ideology attached to it, right? If there is nothing for people to believe in, right? They believe in COVID. That is why they're afraid of it. They believe in Putin, or they believe in Biden. They believe in contrails or chemtrails, right? That's why, it's easy for them to, it's easy for people to manipulate. So I'm going to just show you the book, the one text that played a large part in bringing down the Soviet Union. It's written by Aleksander Solzhenitsyn. He fought in World War II, and what he did is that instead of getting a hero's welcome after World War II, after returning to Russia, to the Soviet Union, he was put in a gulag, right? Because of Stalin's paranoia, he was put in a gulag, and he spent, I think, 40 to 30 something years in the gulag, and he developed a cancer. So life was extremely unfair to him. So here he is fighting against Hitler, greatest tyrant in history, then being persecuted by Stalin, the even greater tyrant of history. Then he's put in a gulag where, it's comparable to the concentration camps in Poland and Germany. And then he is subject with cancer, right? So it can't get worse than this. This person wrote down his views and his experiences in bits and pieces of paper, only to be confiscated by the guards and burned, and then he goes back to writing again. And he smuggles it out of the gulag with the help of other people, gets published in the West, and that destroys the claims of all these pseudo-intellectual leftists who support the Soviet Union. And that finally destroys the credibility of the Stalinist regime and brings down the Soviet Union. It's called the Gulag Archipelago. I recommend everyone to read it. And it is now mandatory reading in Russia, in the Russian Federation, for school children. Okay. For high school children, the Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn is mandatory reading. So the most recent edition of the Gulag Archipelago has a foreword written by Jordan Peterson, somebody I respect a lot. So I'm going to just read out what he has written, a little excerpt of that for our audience before we conclude. Jordan Peterson begins with the communist doctrine first of equality, which is impossible. You cannot make an equal society financially. There has to be poor people, there has to be rich people to give the poor people jobs, and there has to be poor people who are in need of money in order to make a workforce. So only capitalism is a way of moving forward. I mean, capitalism is not perfect, but it is 1,000 times better than communism. So Jordan Peterson, being a psychologist, focuses on that aspect first. And he says, to state forthrightly, I am indeed thrown arbitrarily into history. I therefore choose to voluntarily shoulder the responsibility of my advantages and the burden of my disadvantages, right? So you can't make an egalitarian society. You have to accept responsibility of being arbitrarily thrown into history, like every other individual around you. I am morally bound to pay for my advantages with my responsibility, and I'm morally bound to accept my disadvantages as the price I pay for being. I therefore will strive not to descend into the bitterness of the socialist utopia and then seek vengeance against the bourgeois, because I have less to my credit and a greater burden to stumble forward with than others. And may God himself eternally fail to forgive us if, after passing through this misery, this furnace of death, destruction, and misery, we still remain stiff-necked and stubborn and not see the dangers of communism. And That's how I conclude our meeting today, our very intellectual discussion today, because it comes down to ideas and
I just want to say one thing. The good thing about the capitalist system is that you always have something to aim for. I mean, the human mind, the human being, human nature, they always thrive if they have something to aim for, a goal, whether
right,
that's financial, career, personal, whatever. And in the communist system, you don't really have that opportunity as you
absolutely.
do in a capitalist. So it doesn't matter what your situation is, you can always achieve something. And you do that easily under a capitalist system.
There is unlimited opportunity in a capitalist system, no matter how corrupt the country is, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
No matter
So
how
it all
corrupt
depends
the
on your
country is,
thoughts and your actions.
right?
It's
I
up
mean,
to you at
I
the end of the day, not the government.
absolutely, and that is what Jordan Peterson says. You have to take responsibility for yourself and not let the state take care of you, right?
Yeah.